Hello, everybody. Hope you're good, hope you're well, hope you're fantastic. Right, so this lecture will be on cost revenues and profit maximization. Now, the thing about this topic is it will require practice and simmering, okay? But don't panic. Just practice, and more practice, and you will be fine, okay? It will require practice and simmering though. But don't panic, okay? The more you practice, the more you will get familiar with the concepts we'll discuss in this lecture. So once again, don't panic. Practice. Go over the formula sheets you have, go over your textbooks, and it's not difficult, okay? It's really easy. But you will have to practice, okay? And I'm sure you will be fine. But once again, it will require practice. Okay, let's start. So what is cost? You all know what cost is. You walk into Tesco, you walk into Sainsbury's, you walk into Aldi, you go on Amazon, you go on eBay. You know what cost is. But let's just start from the economic standpoint, okay? It's an amount that has to be paid or given up in order to get something, okay? So you give up your pounds, you give up your dollars, you give up your naira, and you get something in return. Now, from the point of view of a firm, of a business, we have the long run and a short run, okay? So what's the difference between a long run cost and a short run cost? Now, the main difference between long run and short run cost is that there are no fixed factors in the long run, okay? Now, we have both fixed and variable factors in the short run. In the long run, general price level, wages, expectations can adjust to the state of the economy. But in the short run, we don't have that. So think about it. So in the short run, maybe you're just starting your business, okay? So maybe you can't increase the size of your factory. So your factory is your fixed factor. It's your land, okay? Or maybe you can't increase the size of your workforce. Your workforce is your fixed factor, is your land. But in the long run, you can do all these things. So in the long run, all factors are variable. In the short run, some factors are fixed. And that is the main difference between the short run and the long run. Okay, so we've set the difference between long and short run, okay? So in the short run, one factor of production has to be fixed. In the long run, all factors can change, right? In the long run, you can move to a new factory space, you don't need to hold anything constant, you can hire more people, you can produce more goods, you can move, get more new technology. Now, it's important we know the difference between fixed and variable factors of production. And this will also feed into our fixed cost and our variable costs. So think about it. Fixed factors of production, right? You can't move them. And you need to pay for them whether you're producing or not. So like your fixed cost, for instance. Okay? Let me give you an example. Rent. Okay? Now, you have to pay rent whether you're producing or not. It's the fixed factor of production. So you've rented out this factory space. It doesn't matter how many units you're producing, you have to pay the rent. You might be producing 0 units, you have to pay the rent. You might be producing 1 million units, you have to pay the rent. So that's the main difference between your fixed and variable factors. Okay, now let's look at variable cost and a variable factor. Let's have an example. Okay, raw materials. So what happens? When you're producing more, your cost of raw materials goes up. When you're producing less, your cost of raw materials goes down. This is totally different from your rent, right? Whether you were producing 1 million or producing 0, you had to pay the rent. But for your variable factors, your variable cost, it depends on how much you're producing. It depends on how much production is actually going on. So that can vary, right? Now, like we said, in the short run, you have to keep one factor of production fixed. In the long run, you can move. You can change all of them. Okay, you can move to a new factory space. You can hire more people, get new technology. Okay. Now, production in the short run is subject to the law of diminishing returns. Why is this? What is the law of diminishing returns? The law of diminishing returns simply states that when one or more factors are held fixed, there will come a point beyond which the extra output from additional units of the variable factor will diminish. I will say that again. When one or more factors are held fixed, there will come a point beyond which the extra output from additional units of the variable factor will diminish. I will say that one more time. When one or more factors are held fixed, there will come a point beyond which the extra output from additional units of the variable factor will diminish. What are we talking about? So think about it. One factor is held fixed. So maybe rent is fixed. So what's that? Maybe our factory space is fixed. Okay, so let's say this is our factory space. Okay. And then we increase all the factors of production. Say we hire more people. So people. Okay. And then we keep hiring people, we keep hiring people, we keep hiring people, we keep hiring people. We don't increase floor space, we keep hiring people, right? At some point, maybe we had 10 people, production increased maybe 100%. We had another 100 people, production increased another 200%. And then we hired another 100 people. Now we have 300 people in that same factory space. What's going to be happening, right? They're going to start bumping it into each other, right? They're going to have less space to walk. And what will effectively happen is production will diminish. Okay, even though we've increased other factors, because one factor is fixed, here our factory space, additional units of the variable factor, right, will diminish, right? So additional units of our output is diminishing. It doesn't matter, right? Additional output from our variable factors, additional output from our more people that we've hired is diminishing because we've held one factor constant. So this is the law of diminishing returns, and it usually happens in the short run. Why? Because in the short run, remember, at least one factor is held fixed. All right, now we're getting into the really interesting bit. These are some very useful equations. They're in your equation sheet, they're online, they're in your textbooks. Please practice them, and you will get better. Now let's go over them. Your total cost. What are your total costs? As the name suggests, your total costs are your total costs. So your total cost of production, right? So you sum up your production cost, your advertising cost, your labor cost, your transport cost. You sum this up and you get your total cost. Your fixed costs are the cost you incur whether you're producing or not. Doesn't depend on the level of production. You could be producing 0 or you could be producing 1 million units. You will incur this cost. For instance, factory rents, okay? Like our previous example. You have to pay rent whether you're producing or not. The variable cost depends on your level of production, okay? Like your raw materials, right? So you produce more, you need to pay more for raw materials. You produce less, you need to pay less for raw materials. Same for services or any kind of production, okay? Now your marginal costs are very interesting. This is your additional cost for making one extra unit of production. How do we calculate it? Is your change in total cost divided by your change in quantity. Remember, we've already said this triangle here means change. TC is your total cost. Q is your quantity, okay? That's how you calculate that. Now, it's important to note that some textbooks would call your FC TFC. It's the same thing. It's total fixed cost. It means the same thing, right? Instead of saying because we'll find that there's average fixed cost and there's total fixed cost, but it's the same thing. So some textbooks will, instead of FC, they would say TFC. It means the same thing. In the same way, some textbooks will say TVC instead of VC. It means exactly the same thing. They're just saying total variable cost instead of variable cost. It means exactly the same thing. So let's come a bit deeper. And like we said, your marginal cost, your additional cost of making one extra unit is your change in total cost divided by your change in quantity. So you have to find out by how much your total cost is changed by, how much is quantity changed by, and then you get your marginal cost, okay, over here, right? It's the same thing as your total variable cost divided by your change in quantity. Okay, now your total cost, right, one we found over here, is your total cost, total fixed cost plus your total variable cost. So it's, some textbooks would just say it's your fixed cost, FC, plus your variable cost, VC. It means exactly the same thing. Okay, so you just sum these two here, your fixed cost and your variable cost. So how much do I have to pay whether I'm producing or not? How much am I paying now that I'm producing? Sum that up, you get your total cost. Your average total cost, okay, every time you see average, all you have to do is divide by quantity. Okay, it's different from marginal. Marginal is additional, average is average. Okay, so what's the mean? So your average total cost is your total cost divided by quantity. Okay, so all you have to do is find your total cost divided by quantity, and you get your average total cost. Okay, it's the same thing as what we have to the right here. Because we know what the total cost is, right, we just find the average divided by quantity. Now if we're trying to find total cost, all we have to do is multiply the average total cost by quantity, and then we get the total cost. Because we already know what the average total cost is, we know what the quantity is, all we have to do is multiply that together to get our total cost. Our average fixed cost is just the same thing, fixed cost divided by quantity. Once again, your total fixed cost divided by your quantity. If we already know what our average fixed cost is and we know what our quantity is, all we have to do is multiply two of them together and we get our total fixed cost. Our average variable cost is our total variable cost divided by quantity. Once again, okay, so we know our variable cost is, we divide it by quantity, we get our average variable cost. Once again, if we want to get our total variable cost, if we know our average variable cost is, we multiply that by quantity. That's it, we're in there. Our average total cost is our average fixed cost plus our average variable cost. Now look at this, okay? Remember what our total cost was? It was our total fixed cost plus our total variable cost. It's the same thing with our average total cost. This time we're just looking at the averages after we've divided by quantity, okay? Then you get average total cost. Also, we can also get this way, okay? So if we know what our average total cost is, right, multiply that by our quantity, we get our total cost. Also, if we don't know what our average fixed cost is and our average variable cost is, if we know what our total cost is and we know what our quantity is, we do that, we get our average total cost. So it's the same thing. Now once again, you will have to practice these formulas to get used to it, but it's really, really easy. Marginal cost, your change in total cost divided by your change in quantity. Your total cost, your fixed cost plus your variable cost. Your average total cost, your total cost divided by quantity. Your average fixed cost, your total fixed cost divided by quantity. Your average variable cost, your total variable cost divided by quantity. Your average total cost, your average fixed cost plus your average variable cost, or your average total cost divided by quantity. They will both give you the same thing, okay? But you will have to practice this, my people, to get used to it. So please practice and you will be fine. All right, here's an example. So here we have output in units. We have fixed cost in pounds, variable costs in pounds, total costs in pounds, marginal costs in pounds, and average costs. So our output is steadily increasing from 0 units to 1 unit, 2 units, 3 units, 4 units, 5 units, 6 units. Like we said, fixed cost stays the same regardless of production. So when we're producing 0 units, fixed costs at £1,000. If we make 1 million units in the short run, fixed cost will still be £1,000, okay? It won't change. So even when we go up to 6 units in this instance, fixed cost stays the same at £1,000. Our variable costs, on the other hand, they increase, okay, with level of production. So from 0, we go up to 250, 400, 500, 800, 1002, 1007. So remember we said like raw materials, for instance. Okay, so you produce more, you have to use more raw materials, and that will increase. Okay, so variable cost increases. Now your total cost is simply your fixed cost plus your variable cost. Okay, so this plus this would give you this over here. Okay, so in the first row, right, when we're making 0 units, fixed cost was £1,000, variable cost was £0. Total cost in that instance will be £1,000. Okay. Second row, fixed cost, same thing at £1,000. Variable cost is now £250. Total cost will be your £1,000 plus your £250. That'll be £1,250. If we go on the last one here, when output is 6 units, fixed cost is the same at 1,000, but now your variable cost is 1,700. Of course, your total cost is 2,700. Okay. Now, how about your marginal cost? Your marginal cost is very interesting. So it's your additional cost, okay, for making 1 unit. So it's calculated by your change in total cost divided by your change in output. So change in total cost divided by change in output. Okay. Let's say output is in quantity, for instance. Okay. So let's see what happens in the first instance. Okay, in the first instance, when output is 0 units, so it's going to be 0. Yeah, your change in total cost, right? That'll be 1,000 divided by your change in output. That's 0, right? So you're going to have your error or your infinity, so that'll be 0, right? So you have nothing there. Okay, first time. Okay, how about second time? Okay, let's see what happens when output is now 1 unit. What happens? So what's our change in total cost? Our change in total cost will now be 1,250 minus our old total cost. 1,000. That's a change in total cost divided by what's our change in quantity? It's going to be 1 unit. So our new quantity minus 0, our old quantity. So that's going to give us 250 over 1, and that will give us 250. Okay, so we have over here 250. Okay, let's see what happens when we're making 6 units. Okay, when output is 6 units over here. Okay, so what's our change in total cost? So our total cost when we're making 5 units was 2,200. Okay, our new one is 2,007. So it's going to be 2,007 minus 2,200 over, what's our change in quantity? Our new output is 6 minus our old output was 5, and there we go. So 27 minus 22, that's 500 over 1, and that will give us 500 over here. So our marginal cost in that instance is 500. That's how you calculate your marginal cost. How about your average cost? Very simple. All you have to do is your total cost divided by output. So your average cost, okay? So here our total cost is 1,000 divided by output is 0. So the first time we have nothing, right? Second time our total cost was what? 1,250 divided by our output, which is 1, and that would give us 1,250. If we go on the last row, our total cost in this instance is 2,700, right? Divided by our output, which is 6, and that will give us 450 over here. So that's how you calculate your costs, okay? Your total cost, your marginal cost, and your average cost. Very simple, okay? But you have to practice. Now, like we said, the marginal cost is the extra cost of producing a unit. So the cost of producing 1 additional unit is your marginal cost. If your marginal cost is positive, it means the total cost must have increased. So it means because you have produced this additional unit, your total costs have increased. Okay, that's why your marginal cost is positive. If your marginal cost is 0, this means the total costs do not change when an extra unit is made. So you've made an extra unit, but total costs have not changed. So your marginal cost will be 0. For example, a marginal cost of £300 means that the total costs have gone up by £300 when another unit is made. Okay, so because we've made another unit, total costs have gone up by £300. So our marginal cost, our additional cost, is £300 in that case. Thus, the marginal cost shows the rate of change of the total cost. Makes sense, right? On the other hand, your average cost is the average cost of producing per unit. Okay, so the cost of production per unit, which is simply your total cost divided by quantity. Okay, your marginal cost, remember, is slightly different. is your change in total cost divided by your change in quantity. Okay, so very important. Just know the differences between them. So change in total cost divided by change in quantity, that's your marginal cost. Total cost divided by quantity is your average cost. Okay, really simple. Now, what's the relationship between marginal cost and average cost? Really easy. If the marginal cost is greater than the average cost, this will pull the average cost up. If the marginal cost is less than the average cost, this will push the average cost down. So I've showed that right here in this graph. Okay, so we have our marginal cost and we have our average cost. Our marginal cost usually looks like a Nike sign. So you can see it over here. Okay, now when our marginal cost is below the average cost, it pulls the average cost down. So look at it, it's pulling it down here, right? Your marginal cost crosses the average cost at its minimum point. So here at this minimum point of your average cost, right, your marginal cost curve crosses the average cost. Okay, so this is our average cost curve, right? Sort of looking like a U shape. Okay, now your marginal cost, the one that looks like the Nike sign, crosses your average cost at the average cost minimum point right here. Okay, and as soon as it crosses it, and when your marginal cost becomes above your average cost, your marginal cost starts to pull your average cost up. Okay, so if it's below it, pulls it down, above it, pushes it up. Okay, really easy. How about the relationship between your marginal cost and your total cost? This is very interesting as well. Remember we said your marginal cost looks like a Nike sign, okay? So it's a Nike like that. Now, what happens to your total cost? If your marginal cost is positive but falling, so this area here, right? So just the beginning part of the tick, your marginal cost is positive but falling, your total cost will be increasing at a slower rate. So it's increasing here, but it's at a slower rate. So our total cost is increasing at a slower rate. But when your marginal cost is positive but rising, so this other part, you see it's positive and it's rising, right? It's going up. Then your total cost will be increasing at a faster rate. So we'll have this over here, increasing at a faster rate. Okay, really. So we're done with costs now. Now, say we want to talk about output or revenue. All we have to do is just change your cost to output or revenue. So instead of calling this total cost, we'll call this total revenue. Okay, your total revenue, the total money you're making, that will be equal to your total revenue. Okay, your fixed revenue is the revenue you make regardless of if you're selling or not. Okay, so regardless if you're selling, you're producing or not, your fixed revenue. Variable revenue might depend on how much you're producing, how much you're selling. Okay, it's the same thing. All you have to do is substitute that. Your marginal revenue now would be your change in total revenue divided by your change in quantity. Still the same thing. All you have to do is change everywhere you see cost, just change that to revenue. So this would be R. Let's put our R equals to revenue. Okay, so you just change that to R. So change in total revenue divided by change in quantity. This would be change in total variable revenue divided by change in quantity. Your total revenue would be your total fixed revenue plus the total variable revenue. Your average total revenue will be your total revenue divided by quantity. You have your R's here as well. Your total revenue will be equal to your average total revenue times quantity. Your average fixed revenue will be your total fixed revenue divided by quantity. So your total fixed revenue will be your average fixed revenue times quantity. Your average variable revenue will be equals to your total variable revenue divided by quantity. So your total variable revenue will be your average variable revenue times quantity, and your your average total revenue will be equals to your average fixed revenue plus your average variable revenue. Okay, so that's all you'd have to do. Okay, same thing goes if you were going to talk about output, for instance. Okay, so if we had output, this would just be total output. Okay, that would be total output. Okay, and then you turn that to total output, your fixed output, regardless if you're producing or not. Okay, that will be output. Your marginal output will be a change in total output divided by change in quantity. We have output here, right, is equals to 0, right? Okay, so we have this will be output. Okay, stays the same. I would say the same, right? So your marginal output will become your average total output divided by average total divided by changing quantity. Your average that'll be the same as your change in total output divided by change in quantity. Your total output will be equals to your total fixed output plus your total variable output. Your average total output will be your total output divided by quantity. So your total output will become your average total output times quantity. Your average fixed output will be your total fixed output divided by quantity. So your total fixed output will be your average fixed output times quantity. Your average variable output will be your total variable output over quantity. So your total variable output will be your average variable output times quantity. And of course, your average total output will be your average fixed output plus your average variable output. Okay, so all you have to do is just substitute cost into output and you will be fine. So here's an example. We're talking about our marginal product, average product, and total product. Okay, so here number of employees, we have total output in units, average product of labor, so average product, and our marginal product of labor. Okay, so what do we have here, right? Total output we have on the second column. Okay, now all we have to do to find average output, so average product, okay, is to divide that. Remember, that will be total output divided by number, right, of our unit. Here we have employees, so here it will be 10 divided by 1, you'd get your 10. 30 divided by 2, you get 15. 60 divided by 3, you get 20. 76 divided by 4, you get 19. 80 divided by 5, you get 16. Okay, so for your average of anything, it's going to be your total divided by quantity. Okay, and that's it. How about your marginal? Okay, now remember we said marginal is change in total, whatever here is to change in total output, okay, divided by change in quantity. Here we have employees. Okay, so it's the same thing. Okay, so what do we have now? In the first instance, we'll have nothing, right? Because our change in employees would be 0, right? Like, you know, we're just starting. Okay, so we have nothing in the first instance. Okay, right? Okay, how about in the second instance? Okay, what's our change? Okay, so what's going to happen is our change in output, right? We're moving from 10 units to 30 units, so our change in output, total output divided by change in quantity, so that's going to be 30 minus 10 divided by what's our change in quantity? Our change in employees, 2 minus 1, and that's going to be 20 over 1. So that's going to be 20. Now we have there. Okay, let's see what happens when we have 5 employees. Okay, using the same formula, just do it over here now. Okay, what's our change in total output? It's going to be 80 minus 76, our former output, divided by 5 minus 4. Okay, so our new quantity minus our old quantity. So what would this give us? 80 minus 76, that's 4 over 1, and that will give us 4, okay? And that's what we have over here. That's the 4 we have over there. So really simple, okay? Now, why have we gone over this whole process? It's really important for you to know what happens in the long run. So think about what we said in the long run. In the long run, all factors of production are variable. So you can buy more land, you can employ more people, right? You can change any factor of production, okay? Capital, entrepreneurship, any factor of production can be changed in the long run. In the short run, one factor of production has to be kept constant, okay? Maybe your factory space, for instance, okay? So in the long run, what happens is all factors of production can be changed. Now we have to talk about returns to scale. So when we're talking about returns to scale, we're saying returns to your input, okay? So returns to what you've put in. How can you get results? Now, if you have constant returns to scale, you're getting exactly what you're putting in, okay? So think about it. Maybe you study for 10 hours and you get 10 credits, okay? That's constant returns to scale. For increasing returns to scale, you get more than you put in. And this is what we want. So maybe you put in 10 hours of study and you get 20 credits, for instance, okay? Or maybe you put in 10 units of employees and you get 20 units of output, okay? So increasing returns to scale. Decreasing returns to scale, you're getting less than you put in. So maybe you put in 10 units of study and then you get maybe only 5 credits, for instance, okay? So you're getting less than you put in. So what you want actually is increasing returns to scale. So that's the good stuff. That's the good stuff we want, right? Now, why have we gone and talked about all of this? Marginal cost, marginal revenue, marginal output, returns to scale. Well, we know what we're trying to do in business, right? What we're trying to do in business is simply to maximize profit. That's why we're in business, right? So you want to make money. You want to maximize your profit. And how do we do this? Profit is maximized when your marginal cost is equal to your marginal revenue, okay? So all you have to do is calculate all your marginal costs, calculate all your marginal revenues, find the point at which your marginal cost is equal to your marginal revenue, and at that point, you have maximum profit, okay? This might sound tricky, but it's not. So you know how to calculate your marginal cost. It's your change in total cost divided by your change in output, right? Okay. So let's have output during quantity. And how do you calculate your marginal revenue? Is your change in total revenue divided by your change in output. The same thing. Find out where your marginal cost is equal to your marginal revenue. And at that point, bingo, you're smiling to the bank. You have maximum profit. And there you have it. That is why we have studied this whole thing. In conclusion, these are some key terms you should know. Okay, so your total cost, we've already said that's your fixed cost plus your variable cost. So fixed costs, the costs that don't change, like your rent, whether you're producing or not, you have to pay rent. Okay, so your fixed cost plus your variable cost. Your variable cost will change with production, like with raw materials. You produce more, you have to use more raw materials. And that's how you calculate your total cost. It's simply your fixed cost plus your variable cost. How about your marginal cost? Your marginal cost is simply your change in total cost divided by your change in output, okay? O or Q, okay? And that's how you do it. Really simple. So it's your cost of an additional unit, your extra cost of producing one more unit. The total revenue, of course, this is your revenue from sales. What you want to do is maximize profit. And you know how you do this is you try and sell as much as you can, right? So how do we do it? We just price times quantity sold. For instance, if our price is say £10, we sell 2 units, our total revenue is £20, right? So very, very simple. All right. So total revenue is simply price times quantity sold. Your marginal revenue, same way you calculate your marginal cost, is your change in total revenue divided by change in total units sold. So change in total revenue divided by change in quantity. There you have it. Okay, our profit is maximized, and this is the good stuff, Profit is maximized where, ladies and gentlemen, where your marginal cost is equal to your marginal revenue. Very, very important. This you have to know. This I implore you, I beg you, I plead with you to know. Profit is maximized when marginal cost is equal to your marginal revenue. Please, please, please stick this in your memory. All you have to do if you're asked to maximize profit, you calculate your marginal cost, calculate your marginal revenue, find out where your marginal cost is equal to your marginal revenue, and there you have it. You are smiling to the bank. Okay, so your class activity for this week is to try and fill out this table. Okay, so once again, we have output in units, fixed cost in pounds, variable cost in pounds, total cost in pounds, marginal cost in pounds, average cost in pounds, and try and fill this out. Okay, use the formulas to fill this out. Okay, let me give you a heads up. Let me try and see if I can help. So in our first row here, output is 0. What's our fixed cost? We know our variable cost when output is 0 is going to be what? It's going to be 0, ladies and gentlemen. So here we're going to have 10,000, right? Because we know to get our total cost, all we need to do is add our fixed cost and variable cost together. When variable cost is 0 and when our total cost is 10,000, we know this is going to be 10,000. Okay, so we're good. Let's see if I can help you out with another one. Okay, now let's see our average cost. Okay, let's see if we can do for this one here. Okay, so what's our average cost? Our average cost is equals to our total cost divided by output, right? Output, or let's just say quantity there. Okay, same thing. All right, so what is our average cost in this case? It's 3,000. Okay, what's our total cost? We don't know what our total cost is, but we know what our output is. Our output is here. It's 5. Okay, so what's going to be our total cost? It's going to be 3,000 times 5, and that's going to be 15,000. Okay, so what's our total cost in this case? Is going to be 15,000. So use this logic, use this process to fill out this table, okay, and bring it to class. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I know it might seem tricky all we've gone over, but trust me, practice, practice, and practice, and you will get this. I'm sure you all are smart men and women. You know, you all should be winning Nobel Prizes for smartness. You know, I trust you, I believe in you. So just keep working hard, keep doing this, keep applying yourselves, and you will get this. So I will see you in class. Be good to yourselves, be good to your families, be good to each other. Peace, one love, and be cool. See you later, alligator. So see you later, okay? Bye.